Alrighty, everyone, welcome back. So, we're going to start off our trophy discussions for the 2023 season today with the Norris Trophy. I actually almost said the Colorado Avalanche, which would not have made sense, but because we're an Avalanche. But anyways, the Norris is always interesting. Every year, of course, for those who don't know, the Norris Trophy is awarded to the league's best defenseman voted by the writers. So, this year sparked a lot of conversation about this. And usually it is a conversation every year, but does the best offensive defenseman deserve the Norris? So I do want to go in depth with that because I do think it is a topic that is worth talking about for sure. So in 2022, Cale Makar won the Norris Trophy. So we'll start off with Makar. Makar this season, 60 games played, 17 goals, 49 assists for 66 points. Now, many would argue that is a pretty good stat line for missing, I believe, 24 games. And that is the key factor. I can't do math. I think it's 24. It's probably not. But I think that could be the key factor why Makar doesn't win a period. Because if we're being honest, you see a lot of these defenders. Now, all of these defenders, I believe I have on here, except for, a lot of these defenders I have on here, except for Roman Yossi, who we'll get into in a little bit, have all played over 70 games and have played either exactly 82 or they played very close to 82. Cale Makar is the only one in this stat line that has played less than 65 games. So that is something you got to take into consideration when you look at somebody like that because, you're missing about 20 games. Now, some may argue that, oh, yeah, he's deserving of the Norris then because look at how much points he put up in that many less games. But then others will look at, oh, well, he didn't play the full season. So, and there's other defenders out there who played better, so they deserve it. So there's multiple ways you can look at that. But honestly, I don't think Makar wins it this season. He likely will be a finalist for the time that he missed, but I don't think he wins it. Now, the one that has sparked the most conversation with the offensive type of the story, and this is what we're going to bring up a lot in this video, is the Erik Karlsson story. How Karlsson really just wasn't a good defender for a few years there with the San Jose Sharks. And then, Brent Burns leaves. He gets traded to Carolina. And suddenly, Karlsson's the number one guy. He doesn't have to worry about Brent Burns. He doesn't have to share time with Brent Burns anymore. And I think it's really opened up his offensive game. And that's why he's put up stats that we haven't seen in years. Karlsson this season, 82 games played, 25 goals, 76 assists for 101 points. First off, playing the full 82 game schedule. And as well as that, too, 100 points is very significant because there has not been a defenseman that has reached the 100-point plateau since, honestly, I can't really tell you. It might have been even like Paul Coffey, to be honest with you. But there's only been 5 defensemen besides Erik Karlsson that have reached 100 points in a single season. So he has made history. Does that mean he should win it, though? Does that mean, oh, yeah, Karlsson has the most points, he should win it? And that sparks the question. Honestly, I would say probably not. Not because of him being on a bad team and all that. The offense is amazing. If there was an offensive defenseman award, he's winning that. There's no question. But the thing is with me is, you look at that, how are his defensive numbers? Because we got to remember that this is a defensive award. This is awarded to the best defenseman. Now, it's not best defensive defenseman, but it's also not best offensive defenseman. It should be kind of in the middle, like a best two-way defender who can score pretty solid and have a pretty solid defensive stat line. And Karlsson, I think there's better defenders on this list that had a much better stat line. Now look at the next defender. It's Quinn Hughes. So you start off there with 2 non-playoff teams, basically leading the way in points for defenders. Hughes this season, and that's what it's ranked by the way. It's ranked by points. We'll get into that whole conversation a little bit about how all that good stuff because this will be a pretty decently long video. Quinn Hughes this season, 78 games played, 7 goals, 69 assists for 76 points. He's had a good year with Vancouver. There's no question about that. I don't know if he becomes a finalist. I know Vancouver fans would flip out. But honestly, his team's not in the playoffs, so I don't really know if he'll be a finalist. But then again, Karlsson, his team's not in the playoffs. He will be. So, I guess there is that possibility. Third in scoring, you got Josh Morrissey, who I think could have a better chance at winning it than some of the other defenders on this list. mainly because, there's been a lot of references to, Norrisy, and that's what people in the locker room call him. That's what my guy on the Nordcast, Carter, calls him. So there's a lot of references there to the Norris. And honestly, I think he does have a much better defensive game than a guy like Erik Karlsson, but he's still putting up good offense. 78 games played, 16 goals, 60 assists for 76 points, so he's tied there with Quinn Hughes. Just a really solid defender, really took a big step this season for Winnipeg. I would expect him. He's one of my finalists. I do have him as one of my finalists that could potentially win it. I don't think he wins it, but he definitely will be a finalist for sure. He's been good this season and on both ends for the Jets. Next up, you move on to the East. We've been talking about Western Conference defensemen, and that's the basis of this argument because in the East, offense seems to be better than defense. That's not a criticism, but we'll get into it in a second here. Dougie Hamilton for the New Jersey Devils is fourth in scoring with 82 games played, 22 goals, 52 assists for 74 points. Hamilton, really solid season. Is he deserving of the Norris Trophy? You can make that argument. Rasmus Dahlin took a very solid step up for Buffalo. Honestly, if you argued him to be a top 5 defender for this season and potentially become like a Norris ballot type player, I wouldn't disagree with you. I don't know if it'd be this year, though. 78 games played, 15 goals, 58 assists for 73 points. Was a key factor in why the Sabres stayed in the playoffs until March. So that definitely plays a role in all of that, in my opinion. Next up, then, you got Miro Heiskanen. Heiskanen of the Dallas Stars. 79 games played, 11 goals, 62 assists for 73 points. Heiskanen, really solid defenseman. Not many big-name defensive guys on that Dallas blue line, so Heiskanen obviously plays a gigantic role in that. Brandon Montour up next, and with a guy like Aaron Ekblad, who, and we'll refer back to some defensemen like this a few times in this video. Aaron Ekblad was obviously a really solid two-way defender, just never got close to a Norris. With him being out of the lineup for a little bit at times this season, it's given Brandon Montour the opportunity to step up offensively and get first pairing minutes, and he's done a pretty good job. Montour this season, 80 games played, 16 goals, 57 assists for 73 points. So he's having another really solid offensive season. And he has taken a big step up here for Florida. And it's one of the good things, one of the good news with Florida, because I said that Florida does not have a bright future. Even though they are in the playoffs, I still stand by that. And I will stand with that till, they prove me wrong. Adam Fox up next, and Fox won the 2021 Norris Trophy, so just for reference when we move on to the later segment in this video, just so you guys know, that's why he's not in that segment. Fox this season, 82 games played, 12 goals, 60 assists for 72 points. Fox, a really solid defenseman, is really good on two ends of the ice, one of the good defenders like that, so I don't know if he gets consideration, but he did play a full 82-game season, which actually, out of all of these defenders on here, besides Dougie Hamilton and Erik Karlsson, he is the only person to play a full 82-game season. So he's one of 3 people, which I think is impressive. And then the last person I have here is Mikhail Sergachev. Sergachev this season, 79 games played, 10 goals, 54 assists for 64 points. Sergachev, with a guy like Hedman having a down year, being out of the lineup, and even more injured guys in Tampa Bay, Sergachev has done a pretty fine job with what he's had with the Tampa Bay Lightning. This next segment that I want to move into is talking about basically previous Norris winners, like Norris winners dating back to 2016. I want to go into these guys because, they play a big role, and I want to look at their offensive numbers and see, why did they win it and all that good stuff. So I didn't include Fox. I didn't include Makar because obviously they were both in the top 10 scorers from, this season. I did include members that weren't, and I went back all the way to 2016. The last year, I would have gone back further if Duncan Keith hadn't won it in 2015. But of course, right now he's retired, so that definitely plays a role. But we'll start off in 2020, the first year that I started doing this. Roman Josi won the Norris with 67 games played, 18 goals, 41 assists for 59 points. Of course, Josi, that was a shortened season. Of course, 67 games played definitely plays a big role in that. That's why I put a little asterisk to that because you look at all the other defenders that I have on this list. They have all played over 70 games, and this goes back to the Makar argument. He only played 60, and all these defenders played over 70 or 75. apart from Yossi, but that was in the COVID year, so you can't really blame him for that. Yossi, of course, is a solid defenseman, but it was a shortened season. There were even those arguments too of potentially Makar even winning the Norris that year, so that is a possibility. In 2019, you had Mark Giordano, who was, of course, on the Calgary Flames at the time when he won it, but now he was on the Toronto Maple Leafs. His stats this season, 78 games played, 4 goals, 20 assists for 24 points. Giordano had a really solid year this season with, the Maple Leafs, but obviously he's fallen off from that Norris caliber defender that he was last year, or a few years ago, not last year. So obviously, that plays a role. He's not as big of a role as he was in Calgary as he is with Toronto. He's more of a, second, third pairing type defender now. He wasn't that in Toronto or Calgary. He was like the first number one guy because, of course, he was, the captain. 2018 was Victor Hedman. And Hedman this season has had statistically a really bad year. Hedman, 76 games played, 9 goals, 40 assists for 49 points. Now, Hedman, he plays a huge role in this. And the fact that, you look at a guy like him who, was in the Norris conversation for years and years and years on end. And even a lot of us, including myself, a lot of us fans, were saying that Hedman could probably win 2 to 3 more Norrises before the end of his career. And after this season, I'm not entirely too sure if that's possible. This year has been a down year for him. Of course, he's missed some games, but, still pretty shocking how bad of a season he's had. And it just goes to show, like, Tampa seems to be getting more tired and more weaker, as time moves along. Next up, then you got Brent Burns, who won it with the San Jose Sharks, but of course now he is on the Carolina Hurricanes. Of course, that plays a role there, Carlson too. But Burns this year has also gotten a chance to explode offensively, but not at the magnitude of Carlson. Burns, 82 games played, 18 goals, 43 assists for 61 points. Of course, had a really solid year. But I want to play this into it too. Jacob Slavin was a huge role in why he was able to do that. With the way Slavin plays defensively, with the way Slavin handles that blue line, he was a huge role in why Brent Burns was able to, strive offensively this year. And that also plays a big role. You look at guys like that, like you see these defenders putting up insane offense, who's holding up the other end? So you really got to ask that question, and that brings in even more defensemen, and it's just a whole kerfluffle of defenders that you're arguing, oh, they deserve the Norris, they deserve the Norris. It's a whole thing. And then the last one I wanted to look at was Drew Doughty, who won in 2016 with the Kings. Of course, this year, he's not that same defenseman. 81 games played, 9 goals, 43 assists for 52 points. He played a really solid game this year for an LA team. He still plays a lot of minutes on that blue line. Just watching in this year's playoffs, he still plays a lot. So I do definitely want to shout him out for that. But yeah, just not the Norris winner that he used to be. So I want to ask this question now. Is the Norris purely an offensive award? And I kind of answered this earlier. I said no. I said it shouldn't be. And I still really do stand by that. I'm just wondering, like, how do you grade it? How do you typically grade, like, how is a defender a really solid two-way type guy? Like, that's the biggest question. Now, I used to think that, and I used to factor this in with defenders, plus minus I used to think about, but I found out that plus minus for both sides of the argument means nothing, mainly because, both sides have it. Both offensive players and both defensive players have it. So it's not like just a defenseman type stat. And two, it really doesn't mean much because you could be on the ice when your team's a high flying offensive team. You could have like a plus, like 100, or well, that wouldn't happen in this day and age. But like, let's say you're on a team with like Wayne Gretzky and all that good stuff, and the guys who are leading, the plus minus really do prove that. And that's not to take away from any of the guys that I have that I'm talking about here. But still, Hampus Lindholm is the leading plus minus with 80 games played, 10 goals, 43 assists for 53 points. Lindholm, I still think he is a solid defenseman. He has a really solid two-way game. The plus minus for him, I think I kind of exclude out because he has played solid this year for the Boston Bruins. He just won't get Norris recognition, I don't think. And Bruins fans have been calling for it. Charlie McAvoy, too, who I unfortunately don't have on this list. There's so many Bruins defenders who I could give shout-outs to, but I chose not to. But there's so many guys in the Boston Bruins blue line that you could talk about. But you got Matt Grzelcyk too. Grzelcyk, 75 games played, 4 goals, 22 assists, 26 points with a plus 46, and that plays a role. Only having 22 points or 26 points, sorry, is not going to get you a Norris. It's not. Even if it is like a two-way type of player game, it's not going to get you a Norris Trophy. It just simply isn't. And I hate to say that. I like a guy like Matt Grzelcyk. I like a guy like Brandon Carlo, too. Carlo, 75 games played, 3 goals, 13 assists, 16 points, a plus 44. That's not going to get you a Norris. So, looking at plus minus to me kind of is a BS type stat. Now, Devon Tays I got to give a shout out to here as well. Because Tays, I've liked for many years, since that trade with the Islanders. He's been a really good mentor and a really good partner for Cale Makar. Tays this season, 80 games played, 7 goals, 43 assists, 50 points with a plus 39. The offense is there, so that definitely, that plays a role in my opinion. But to be honest with you, I don't know. I feel like, a lot of people when it's the Makar versus, somebody argument, whether it's like Makar versus Fox, for example. And I know people who do this, they will bring up Devon Tays and how good of a defensive defender he is. And, he's a good all-around guy, just will never get Norris consideration, which sucks, but it just isn't going to happen. And then the last guy I got here is Ryan Graves for the New Jersey Devils, who is 5th in plus minus. With 78 games played, 8 goals, 18 assists for 26 points. He is a plus 34 for the New Jersey Devils. So I want to ask you guys this question: Who do you guys think will win the Norris, and who do you guys think deserves the Norris? I think that honestly, Carlson likely will win it, not because of like the offensive stuff, but I think because the writers voted him miles ahead of the second guy. So I probably think that Carlson's going to win it this year, even though he was on a bad team, had middling defensive stats, and all that. But just because he made history, that's likely why he's going to win it. But anyways, I want to know your guys' thoughts in the comment section down below. Thank you all very much for watching. We will do, I believe I have the Calder Trophy scheduled next. Yes, I do. So we'll have that out pretty soon. But anyways, thank you all for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Adios.